Good morning, good day. Thank you so much for being here as we continue in our School of Obedience. We want to thank the Lord for all that He has been downloading and sharing with us and helping us as we journey in this School of Obedience. So we have been looking at the School of Obedience, and in Psalm 119, 124, our opening scripture was, "Teach me, your servant, to obey." And we looked at the fact that there are nine levels, and we have looked at level 1, which is disobedience. And we see at this level, there's no sensitivity to the Spirit of God or to the voice of God. There's no acknowledgement that the Lord speaks today. At this level, there's also presumption. And this is one of the reasons that causes us to be disobedient, not following through with the instructions and the mandates given to us by the Lord. Then we went from level 1 to level 2. And we noticed that level 2 and level 3 are prerequisite levels. In other words, in order to have a successful journey of being totally obedient, obeying the Lord instantly, no delay, no partial obedience, it is necessary for us to embrace, engage, and accept these two levels, level 2 and level 3, level 2 being desire. At this level, we are positioned to obey. And the two desires are: one, you have a desire to please God. And your cry is like the cry of the psalmist David when he said in Psalm 86:11, "Give me an undivided heart." The other desire at this level is that God's desire is to help us to desire to obey Him. And then in addition to that, He also helps us to obey Him. Philippians 2:13, God works in us to both will and to do His good pleasure. So level 2, a prerequisite, and level 3, decision. This is where we prefer obedience. This is where we make a decision. We make a decision now that whatever is to come, whatever is on the way, whatever instruction or invitation is to come, we are making that decision now that we are going to obey the Lord. So those two levels, level 2, level 3, are prerequisite levels. And then we went on to level 4, which is don't delay. At this level, prompt obedience. And our mantra is don't delay, do it today. And this is where the Lord has taught us concerning first-time obedience. Whatever He says to us, we do it today. Do not delay. And we looked at the fact that obedience requires trust. And we must obey. It is important, it is imperative that we are obedient. And we also looked at the fact that love and obedience are two sides of the same coin. This next level that we want to look at, level 5, I call discomfort. Discomfort. It is where we address the whole issue of partial obedience. We must obey God even if it takes us from our place of comfort. There was a king in 2 Chronicles 25, verses 5 to 10. He was preparing for battle, and he hired 100,000 experienced mercenaries from Israel. And he paid $200,000 for these rebels, these mercenaries. But a prophet arrived with this message from the Lord and said, "Sir, do not hire troops from Israel, for the Lord is not with them. If you let them go with your troops to battle, you will be defeated no matter how well you fight. For God has power to help or to frustrate." And Amaziah the king, he whined. He said, "But the money, what shall I do about that? I have put out so much money." And the prophet replied, "The Lord is able to give you much more than this." So Amaziah, though he was at a place of discomfort because he had hired these servants and he would not get the money back, he was obedient. So Amaziah sent them home again to Ephraim, which made them very angry and insulted. Then Amaziah took courage and led his army to Salt Valley, and there he killed 10,000 men. Another 10,000 were taken alive at the top of the cliff and thrown over so that they were crushed upon the rocks before. So this king, he experienced a level of discomfort in being totally obedient to the Lord. It was a place of discomfort, but he was obedient to the Lord. I want to use this opportunity to share with you a personal journey that I had, and I know it will give you clarity concerning this whole matter of partial obedience and ensuring that we are following through on everything that the Lord requires of us today. And so I want to call this owning the mandate. Owning the mandate. The term mandate has become a household name as a result of my own journey with Wailing Women. The nature and importance of a mandate are now very clear. We hear it all the time. We go to conferences. Abraham's mandate to his servant provided further clarity in relation to God's provision for a mandate. However, this journey that I'm about to relate to you has brought depth of insight into what it really, really means to intentionally obey, walk in, and fulfill a mandate, completing all that is required, not being partial in your obedience, not saying I can't do all of this, but fulfilling every aspect of the mandate. So earlier, a few years ago, the Lord downloaded a message for me relating to unwrapping unanswered prayer. In essence, many times we feel that the Lord is not responding to some of our prayers, when in fact he has. I used the example of the church in Acts praying for Peter's release from prison. The Lord responded with a dramatic rescue operation. And when the answer arrived at the doorsteps of the praying church, they rejected the answer and continued to petition God for Peter's release. The Lord gave me an example to use. He said that, for example, many times we pray for discipline in our nation, and he has been responding. How does he respond? So I usually take 3 taxis to get to a particular destination. When I get to the city, which is the second stop, there are a lot of private cars, I call them P cars, vying for your attention to take you to various locations. The official taxi stand is a 15-minute walk from the city. So I would have to walk when I get to the city, which is my second stop. I then have to walk 15 minutes to the official stand. However, when I get to the city, the second stop, there are a lot of P cars, private cars, who are vying to take you where you want to go. So it takes away having to walk that extra 15-minute walk. All right. So let me explain, for the purpose of this session today, the difference between the P car and the H car. All right. So when I say P car, I'm referring to a private vehicle. It's licensed for private use. Okay. And when I say H car, I am saying taxi. These are the cars that are registered to ply a route as a taxi, operating as a taxi. All right. So when I say taxi, I'm referring to the official cars that have been licensed to operate. And when I say P cars, I'm referring to the private cars that are not licensed as a taxi, but they do pick up passengers, etc. All right. So the nation has recently introduced traffic wardens to regulate order on the nation's roadways. when the traffic wardens or the police are around, there are absolutely no P cars in sight because they know that they are not supposed to be operating as taxis. All right. So usually before this mandate the Lord gave to me, I would be a little put out that when I get to the second stop in the city, I now have to walk 50 minutes to the stand in search of cars because the traffic wardens are in place. So while working on the message re-unwrapping unanswered prayer, the Lord brought this scenario to my mind and he indicated, yes, you're praying for discipline and I am answering. The traffic wardens that are now in place are an answer to our prayer for discipline in our nation. So therefore, it means that I am to take the taxis at the official taxi stand, which is where all the taxis are parked to go to where I need to go to my third destination. So I immediately obeyed. Remember, we're talking about a journey. So I have been through the lesson on prompt obedience, do not delay. So the Lord said, take the taxis at the official taxi stand. Okay. So I immediately obeyed. And from then until this day, I have been taking the taxis to my third destination from this second spot. So this was an alignment of place. The Lord aligned place. There is a blessing laid at the gates of obedience. And so not very long after that, I was sitting in the front row of a P car to an exchange between a police officer and a P car driver. Now, I had taken this P car at the official taxi stand because that's sometimes what the P cars do. They go to the official taxi stand and also wait there. So I was at the official taxi stand, but I was in a P car. And during the exchange, I realized that this was actually for my benefit, this conversation between the police officer and the taxi driver who was being reprimanded for using the official stand. And I realized then, because of that exchange, that the Lord did not want me taking P cars. So this was now an alignment of space. So I'm now to take only the taxis licensed H and to take them at the official taxi stand. All right. So the alignment of place had to precede the alignment of space. So I want to highlight for you my journey with this mandate from the Lord, and you will see the number of ways in which we are tempted to be partially obedient to the instructions of the Lord. So the first point I want to make is that there must be a proper execution of the mandate. There must be a proper execution of the mandate. Execution is the bridge between a plan and success. So there are more P cars than H taxis plying the routes. And thus they come with great regularity. You go out on the road and before you even step up on the sidewalk, there are P cars, trying to get your attention. They're ready to pick you up. There are times when I will have to have a longer wait for a taxi than I was used to because the taxis, the H cars, are not as regular as the P cars. However, I determined that I was going to be obedient to the Lord's directive to take the H cars, the licensed ones, officially licensed to ply as taxis. I would only take those cars. Now, it goes to the fact that we must make a decision. So before this mandate from the Lord came, I had already made a decision, prerequisite number 2, that I was going to obey the instructions of the Lord. It also meant that I had to make some adjustments. If I left home at my usual time to get to my destination, the possibility existed that I would run late and hence be tempted to reason with the Lord as to why I needed to take a P car. So in order to ensure that there were no excuses to give to God, I adjusted my departure time from home upwards of 1 hour to ensure that I had absolutely no excuse. So if I had to reach for 8 o'clock and I normally left at 7, And I knew that if I left at 7, I might be late because I'm not going to get the H cars as often. I now adjusted my time and I left home at 6, just to ensure that I had no excuse to have to take a P car. As we address our mandate, my brothers and my sisters, what excuses do we proffer to the giver of the mandate? Is he not aware of our schedules, our family commitment, our church commitment, our job responsibility? Yet he summoned us to this worthy assignment. Is he such an unjust God that he will ask something of you that even with his help is beyond our ability to perform? Why do we give excuses of lack of time, lack of energy, lack of resources to the God who is the giver of time, the giver of energy, and the giver of resources? Many times we forfeit the blessing laid at the gates of obedience because we delay in doing what God has asked us to do. So there can be partial obedience when we have not made the prior decision to execute the mandate as given to you. So the first thing about the mandate, there must be a proper execution of the mandate. You have to make a decision beforehand that you are going to fulfill every aspect of the mandate. The second thing that we must understand is that there's a provision for the mandate. It is common knowledge that there's an unavailability of H cars after certain hours of the day. So in the evening time, upwards of 8, 9, 10, it becomes difficult to get an H car because they stop working by a particular time. So one evening after one of our chapter meetings, I got to the taxi stand at approximately 9 p.m. to get a taxi to go home. I saw, as I expected, only P cars on the stand. These were drivers that I was familiar with. So because of the lateness of the hour, I took one of the cars. My sisters and my brothers, as we left the stand, I looked back and saw an H car pulling into the stand, and I felt a stab of disappointment as I realized that the Lord had made provision for me. I repented, and I determined that that was going to be the last time. No matter how late I get to the stand, I will always take a taxi to get home. My sisters, my brothers, the God who gave us the mandate has already made provision for the mandate. We don't have to accept the experience of others as the standard. Our standard is the Lord, and we have the responsibility to use his template and not that of the world. There will be partial obedience if we don't hold firmly to the fact that the giver of the mandate has also made provision for the mandate. Trust him as the source. There is provision already wrapped up in God's mandate to us. There is therefore no obstacle, no impossibility to come that God has not already made provision for. The God of Wailing Women has instructed us to come to him for the resources we need to fulfill our mandates. God has rolled away every stone of limitation. So in order to walk in complete obedience, no partial obedience, to any instruction given by the Lord, there must be proper execution of the mandate. Proper execution of the mandate. And then we have to understand that there is provision for the mandate. Thirdly, we need to protect the mandate. So after another prayer meeting, I got to the stand just before 10 p.m. And of course, there were no taxis, no H cars. P cars came, P cars filled up, and P cars left me there. People came, stood with me, jumped into P cars, and left. I prayed, I said, God, I have a retreat all day the next day. I have a speaking engagement on Sunday. I have to travel the next day. I really need to get home. Shortly afterwards, a gentleman who noticed that a number of us were still waiting for some time for a taxi, he propositioned a P car driver who was going to another community to move from his stand, come across to our stand and pick us up so that we could get home. So he asked the individuals around me who were standing there to go with this P car, and the persons responded and went into the car. He noticed that I had not moved, and he turned to me and he said, "Are you coming?" And I said, "No, thank you." There are people who are aware of our mandates. They admire and they respect what we have been called to do. And they will, with every good intention and motive, try to assist us in the exercise of our mandate. There are friends, family members who may want to make our burden, quote unquote, lighter and help us to get to our destination faster. They may introduce us to a contact that they have in the government so that we can get through with a particular matter. However, we know the specific conditions related to our mandate, and we must not allow well-meaning individuals to move us from our position of alignment with the mandate and hence fall into the trap of partial obedience. This gentleman was well-meaning. I was standing there. It was late at night. But I know the mandate that I had from the Lord. He did not. It is therefore my responsibility to ensure that I walk in complete obedience. I have to protect the mandate. So in order to walk in complete obedience to any instruction given by the Lord, we must have proper execution of the mandate. We must understand that there is already provision for the mandate. We must protect the mandate. And fourthly, we must stand by the mandate, and the mandate will stand by you. There must be no compromise. So when I was traveling on my own, I was resolute in what the Lord's directive was, and there was complete obedience. I would take the official taxes and take them at the official taxi stand. There was no partial obedience. However, on that rare occasion when my family traveled with me, this was one of the harder aspects to bring into alignment. When I just started out with this mandate and a P car would come, because they didn't share my conviction or even the mandate that I had, they were ready to jump into the car. I didn't want to be blamed for anyone being late, etc., etc. So I jumped in with them. However, as I walked in the mandate, I became more resolute and was no longer moved by their choice. They actually even offered reasons why my resoluteness to abide by the directive was unreasonable. I listened with grace so as not to be disrespectful, but I stood my ground because I understood the mandate that I had. Now, if we travel together, they respect my conviction and they take taxes when they are with me, or they will go ahead of me. We are part of the same family, but they did not receive the mandate that I had. There is to be no compromise, no partiality in the execution of our mandate. So now when I travel, they know that I am taking a taxi. I'm not going to be jumping in a P car, and that is respected. We must stand by the mandate, no compromise, no partial obedience, irrespective of who it is. In order to walk in complete obedience to any instruction by the Lord, there must be proper execution of the mandate. We must understand that there's provision for the mandate wrapped up in the mandate. We must protect the mandate. We must stand by the mandate, and the mandate will stand by you. And fifthly, there will be people alignment with the mandate. So there is a P car driver who lives in my community, and he goes to the destination that I need to go to. So while he is on his way to get to the third destination, he picks up passengers from each section of the journey. So what it means then is that if I get into his car, his P car, I don't get out of his car until I get to my third destination, because he goes to the first, the second, and the third. So it is a great blessing. It was a ride from my community straight to my destination. I didn't have to come out and take other vehicles. This was one of the hardest aspects of this mandate. And the Lord was so very gracious to me. I did not see him for weeks. The Lord allowed me to build up my resolve in following this mandate. So one day I saw his car coming towards me and I wasn't so sure of my resolve. And I looked up quickly and there was a taxi coming, a ram in the thicket. I don't even think I said goodbye to those who were with me. I just jumped into the taxi that came. Eventually, I asked the Lord to give me an opportunity to explain to this P-car driver why I can no longer come in his vehicle to go to where I need to go. The Lord gave me an opportunity one morning as I was heading to a retreat, and I shared with him why I was no longer able to ride in his car because of the mandate that I had from the Lord. And he said he understood, but there was nothing he could do about it. And I said, yes, there is. You could get your taxi license. And he said, he has a taxi license. I said, well, use it. We cannot bring people into alignment to do the correct thing if we ourselves are not walking in total obedience with the mandate. We cannot effectively enlist and rally the support of persons in our care, in our teams, if we are not walking in alignment with the mandate. We must be witnesses of what we are called to do. And in order for there to be people alignment, we must walk in total, complete obedience. We can only ask for persons to do when they see that we're walking in that mandate, in that obedience. In order to walk in complete obedience to any instruction given by the Lord, there must be one, proper execution of the mandate. Decision must be made beforehand that I am going to fulfill the instructions of the Lord. 2, we must understand that there's a provision for the mandate. 3, we must protect the mandate. 4, we must stand by the mandate and the mandate will stand by you. 5, there must be people alignment with the mandate. 6, there will be prayer alignment for the mandate. One morning, as I waited at the official taxi stand to take a taxi to my destination, I noticed that the taxis were not plying the complete route. They would go a short distance and return quickly because there was a lot of traffic on the road at peak hours. So the persons who needed to get to the furthest end of the journey were being prevented from getting a ride. There were schools and there was a hospital in this area. And so school children were not being able to get to school on time. There were pregnant women with young babies who needed to get to the hospital and they were being affected. And I said to myself, this is not right. They are here at the stand where they're supposed to get the taxis and the taxis are going short, as they would say. So I turned and I started to pray to the Lord about the matter. Do you know what the Lord said to me before I started to pray? He said to me, I will now hear your prayer because you are walking in alignment. Listen, I couldn't pray for a few minutes as that sunk in. So I was like, so it means that all these other prayers that I might have prayed prior concerning this matter of these taxes, etc., they had not been received by the Lord because I was not walking in alignment. There was no heart and mouth alignment because before I was a part of the problem. I was doing the wrong thing. I then began to check my life to see if there are any other areas in which, because of my partial obedience, my prayers were not being heard. Sisters, brothers, we cannot ask the Lord to bring about change in situations if we are not walking in total obedience in that situation. For example, how can we ask the Lord, petition the Lord to step in and prevent a new law from being passed when we ourselves are not walking in total obedience with the existing laws of the land? For example, the speed limit. We cannot ask the Lord to bring about change in situations if we are not walking in total obedience in that situation. There must be heart and mouth agreement. In order to walk in complete obedience to any instruction given by the Lord, there must be proper execution of the mandate. We must understand that there's provision for the mandate. We must protect the mandate. We must stand by the mandate, and the mandate will stand by you. There must be people alignment with the mandate. You must be witnesses of the Lord in the way in which you follow the instruction of the Lord. There must be prayer alignment with the mandate. 7, we will fulfill the mandate. There must be fulfillment of our mandate. We are called to be the oil of solution. So one evening on my way home, the taxi driver started a conversation with me. All the other passengers had already alighted and we were alone. He highlighted that he knew of taxi drivers who have bought homes or sent their children to university just by working as a taxi driver. He started to lament that taxi drivers are now struggling financially because there is such a proliferation of P cars and vans, and they're either forced out of the taxi stand where they're supposed to be, or they're just not able to get passengers anymore because there are so many P cars who are plying the routes. I noted that prior to the Lord's directive to me, I was one of those contributing to this malady. So I asked him, why was he sharing all this with me, a total stranger? I was amazed at how the Lord was just bringing these situations to be. What am I talking about? I'm talking about fulfilling the mandate. We have to walk in alignment with the mandate. Listen to who this person was who was talking to me. He was the president of the taxi association for that community. And he was trying to bring things into alignment. Do you see how the Lord connected me as I was walking in total obedience to this mandate? How he connected me to this gentleman? He was actually getting threats to his personal security because of his efforts. He highlighted an initiative that he was engaged in, and I pledged my support to him. I also prayed with him. This brought encouragement to him and the other taxi drivers in the area. And we continue to stay in touch. They have since formed an association. They have put up signs. They have meetings. More taxi drivers have come on the route because they see that positive change is taking place. When we don't walk in the mandate, we miss out on the opportunities to be oil of solution because we are a part of the problem. In order to walk in complete obedience to any instruction given by the Lord, first of all, there must be a proper execution of the mandate. Secondly, we must understand that there is already provision wrapped up in the mandate. Thirdly, we must protect the mandate. 4, we must stand by the mandate, and the mandate will stand by you. There must be people alignment with the mandate. We must be witnesses, true witnesses of what God is doing. There must be prayer alignment with the mandate. There must be a fulfillment of the mandate, and this comes as we walk in total, complete obedience to any instruction given by the Lord. And finally, praise and glory comes to God as a result of our obedience to the mandate. And this is where it all flows. So one evening, I got to the taxi stand after 10 p.m. I was on my way home. I had chapter meeting and I got to the taxi stand after 10 p.m. I waited. There was a party that was in progress and getting hotter by the minute. A gentleman actually pointed out to me that a P car was working because he saw me waiting for so long. And so I politely refused. I saw another P-car driver and I asked him, where are the taxis? And he looked at me incredulously. He said, ma'am, there are no taxis working at this hour of the night. However, he pointed me to a P-car that was working. Again, I said, no, thank you. Please recall that I had failed this test previously when I looked back and saw that God had provided a taxi for me. So I was getting this test again, and we looked at this in one of our previous levels, that if there's a test that you have failed, we're going to get the test again before we can advance to the next level. So sometime later, minutes to midnight, I am still standing there. Someone approached me and asked me if I was heading home. When I turned around to see who it was a taxi driver that I knew and a brother in the Lord, but this was not his route. He was actually heading home and he saw me standing waiting, and he parked his vehicle, walked across to me to see what was happening. Listen, I was so excited. I took his arm and I took him to the P-car driver who told me that there was no taxi working at this hour. And I said, see, look, the Lord has provided a taxi driver for me. But listen to the testimony. This taxi driver, this brother in the Lord, was actually in the city filling up to go to another destination. He got a full trip. And as he was driving off the taxi stand in the city, his taxi shut down. It refused to start. He had to empty his 7-seater taxi, get someone to give him a jump start. And after all of that, he decided he would just head home. And that's when he saw me. So if he had taken that trip from the city to their destination, he would have gone home a different route and he would not have passed on the road where I was waiting. So if he had not shut down, he would not have been in that area where I was. So after I shared this testimony with him, he himself realized what the Lord did. And he said, wow, the Lord shut me down to take care of you. When he saw me initially, he shut off the vehicle and parked a little way off in order to come and get my attention. So as we were walking back to the vehicle, he lamented that he should not have shut off the car because he may get the same problem again and not be able to start the car. I said to him, don't worry. The Lord will not allow you to come to the aid of his daughter and not allow your car to start again. This was without knowing all that had transpired before in the city. When we got into the taxi, the car started immediately. My sisters, I have shared this journey with you to have us understand that when the Lord gives us an instruction, when he gives us an invitation, and we understand the whole matter of invitation, it's an opportunity to be in alignment with the Father's will, to accept his will, accept his invitation. It's a portal to blessing. It's an opportunity to ensure that we are walking. There are two sides, love and obedience. It shows that there's evidence that we love the Father, and it proclaims yes. So when we get the instructions, the invitations from our Father, we must ensure that we are following through on every single detail of the assignment. There must be no partial obedience. We must walk completely the way that he wants us to go. So in order to ensure that there is complete obedience in any mandate given to us, there must be proper execution of the mandate. We must understand that God has already made provision for all that we need to fulfill the mandate. We must protect the mandate. We must stand by the mandate, and the mandate will stand by you. There must be people alignment with the mandate. As we come into alignment with the mandate, we must be witnesses to people of what the Lord is doing. There must be prayer alignment. And we can only come into prayer alignment if we walk in alignment with the mandate. We must fulfill the mandate, and praise and glory comes to God as a result of our obedience to the mandate. Tomorrow, I will share with you a reward, because as I said, when you obey, it opens the door to blessing. And there was a blessing that came as a result. I didn't realize it was the blessing until in retrospect, when I looked back at this journey, I realized that the Lord gave this blessing. So I pray that you will understand the necessity of walking in complete obedience to the mandates of the Lord and ensuring that we are in complete obedience with his will and his way. Tomorrow, we are going to look at level 6, which is distinct path. When we get to this level, it is a distinct path. And this is a path of personal obedience. May the Lord bless you richly. Thank you so much.